we're going. So I will start with Leanne because on my screen she's at the top. So so I know Leanne through the Lens classes, and she was, as we started Painter's Compass, was an eager volunteer. She wanted to help out. She was like willing to do whatever, but she was still working at the time, I think, or about to stop working.
About to retire, yeah.
And so at any rate, she was one of the people who I knew had a desire to be helpful with this whole thing. And so that was one of the reasons she's on our list of new board members. And Leanne, why don't you just give us a little blurb about yourself?
Sure. So I retired about 6 months ago.
Oh, wow.
And have enjoyed every minute of retirement. I don't know why I didn't do it sooner. I started out with Glenn back when he was teaching at Glen Echo Park. And at the time I was doing pastel paintings. And I really had just kind of started on my own. I had dabbled with art in high school, but never did anything very formally. And started taking lessons with him. And then when he moved to the atelier, I couldn't take classes anymore because I was working and they were in the afternoon and I couldn't make it. So not that, maybe a year and a half ago, I was able to take the Fridays off and go to through the Lens class. And I continue to work in pastel, but I've made the switch to oil also. And my career has been in education, and I was the last job was a nonprofit that developed curriculum for 3 and 4 year olds and ran charter school nursery schools. And I'm very interested in the art education part of this. I'm not an educator. I was a video producer for many years and did teacher training videos and teacher professional development. But I was also involved in some of the curriculum planning processes and creating products for that. So we had a line of illustrated children's books that we work with artists to get the illustrations for and the writers to write them. So I think the earlier you get kids started on art and give them encouragement, the better. I also just recently became a grandmother for the first time, and I got a photo from my daughter. My granddaughter's now about 6 months old, and they had a picture of her doing her first art project at daycare. She was doing, hand painting, and so the sooner you get them going, the better. So I'm looking forward to working with you all. Some of you I recognize from classes or from exhibits that we've been to. So I'm just really looking forward to being part of the work.
Thank you so much.
That's great.
Oh, thank you.
Let me go to Margot. Margot is also someone I met through the Lens classes, and Margot is somebody who is a long history of volunteerism, particularly through her church and affiliated organizations, but they are very much focused on issues of disenfranchised people, and Margot, has an incredible kind of track record in those arenas. She also is a recent retiree, freeing up more time to play with us. And so I'll let her talk a little bit about herself.
So, hi, everyone. Yeah, I was just counting. It's actually 4 months ago that I retired, and that was after starting MAP. So I'm in the thick of it right now. And I can't say that I've been painting all of my life in one way or another. I have always wanted since a child to be an artist, but I was actually discouraged. I grew up in a time where the concept that you must be gifted with the ability to draw or paint, there is no way to learn it. And that was impression I got from my elders, basically. And so I never pursued taking art classes until I was an adult, in a very frustrating work situation, and it was the decision for my own sanity, really. And so I started doing classes through the county, which was hit and miss in terms of technique, and I knew I needed a more concrete step-by-step, start at the beginning kind of a thing. And I met Glenn, and because I didn't have the time and the resources to enroll, pardon, that's Xavier in the back here. I didn't have the time and the resources to do MAP. And I couldn't, I knew that I couldn't do that while working full time and caring for an aging parent. So I did start through the Lens class in the fall of 2017. And as Quakers like to say, way opened for me to be able to enroll in MAP. And I recognized what a privilege that was, and that not everybody has that privilege. So when Diane let me know that Painter's Compass was starting, I was very excited about the prospect of a group of us who recognize our own privilege and then trying to extend that to other people. So I too have an interest in the education process. I currently have one art student who is well aware that she's getting Glenn Kessler Light. But through that process, I have been developing sort of a drawing boot camp and then a deep dive into color theory as individual, maybe 6 to 12 week courses that people can take. And that might be something that we can explore doing as a group to extend what we're all learning at Compass to people who don't have that opportunity. I do teach Sunday school, and I'm also doing art with them as a means of finding their own inner strength, which the kids really need a lot of right now. So.
Thank you, Margot. So Rob Perlman is someone who I saw around a little bit in the world of the painting through the lens classes, but didn't really get to know until MAP. He and I are in the same MAP class, and have become sort of our own little support group, I would say. But
yes, we have.
Yeah. And but just getting to know Rob some, I know I knew that he would bring a lot to this organization, and partly because he is like an amazing creator and maker, and sort of he sees something that needs to be done, and he goes and starts engineering a way to do it, and it does it with lots of kindness and with real sensitivity. So it is I think he'll be a great addition to our group, and I think he's also interested in the work of education or trying to make painting stuff more accessible. And I'll let him talk about himself.
Well, I'm flattered and honored, to hear you describe me in that way. It's very kind. I retired from a 40-year career 2 years ago. And I knew that when I retired, all I wanted to do was make art and make things and, do things that made me happy. I mean, I had a terrific career. I worked in architecture, design, and engineering, more on the project management, real estate, side of things for an international organization. And I was blessed to be able to travel and, see impoverished places around the globe. One of the things I did right after I retired was, and I've grown up with art my entire life. My mom was an artist and designer. And I too, like Margot, when I was college age, was discouraged strongly from going in that direction, as a youngster. But photography had been my primary art, along with working with wood and making things my whole life. And I felt like I wanted to branch out from photography, and kind of stumbled on Glenn's Paint Through the Lens ad. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's cool. Because I have tons of photos that are, interesting, but not great photographs. But, with play could be really, really fun. So I started taking Paint Through the Lens, fell in love with oil painting. And, I've now been doing that for about the same amount of time as Diane, about 2 years. Anyway, to make a long story short, I'm dedicating the rest of my life to art and art-related endeavors. And since I retired, I've been thinking about and wanting to do some kind of volunteer work, but, I didn't really want to, like, my wife works at the International Clothing Center and, delivers food, and, and I just felt like, I want to, when I volunteer, I want to do it in a way where I'm really working with something I'm passionate about. So when Diane asked me if I might be interested in this, I said, yeah. Plus, I know some of you, and I know I've seen, your work, and to be part of a group of really thoughtful, creative, folks looking at making, things happen is very cool. I also, I'm attracted to kids, especially art with kids. And I have, I know a number of people who also work with, my wife has worked in the Montgomery County school system with underprivileged groups as an ESOL counselor. She retired as a clinical psychologist. So I don't know. I told Diane I'm willing to give this a try, though I'm extremely protective of my time. And she agreed. In any event, it just sounds like an interesting, exciting, and potentially fun adventure with, really high quality people, which is one of my important criteria for spending time. So I don't know what else to say, except thank you for including me.
Thank you.
And, I hope to be able to contribute something meaningful.
Great. So finally, I want to introduce you to Mandy. And Mandy, tell me how to pronounce your last name.
Coelho, just like the author Paulo Coelho.
Coelho.
But no relation.
Okay. So when we were looking for recommendations for people at our last meeting, among the recommendations was Mandy, and one of the, Mandy, was I think it was Susie. There's several people were talking about you, but that Susie in particular thought that her kind of go get emness was something that would be helpful. And then, that and one of the things that is both challenging, I think, for Mandy, but also something that it adds to what we're doing here, is that she's actually has a full-time job. And so she is going to be having to balance her full-time job, unlike the rest of us, except for Bill, and trying to see how her contribution can be made within that framework. And we sort of agreed that what we would do is because as you know, we are on staggered terms so that not everybody falls off the board at the same time. And so we agreed that she would pick up a one-year term, and we'll see how this goes. But that I think it's important for us to recognize that so many of the people that are members of Compass Club and that are part of our audience are people exactly like Mandy, who are trying to do art while doing work, and that we need to be sure we have that perspective at our table. And so in that sense, for whatever else she brings, she'll bring us some reality testing about how we connect with that part of our constituency, which is a significant part of our constituency. And so anyway, so we know that she brings creativity. We know that she brings that get things done mentality, but she also will bring that good perspective to us, I think. So please, Mandy, go ahead and talk a little bit about yourself.
So I have always been interested in the arts. I grew up in a very cultured family. My mom was an interior designer. I was always taken to like the ballet, the opera, all those fun things, and was always just introduced to the arts across the board. But when it came time for me to go to college and I wanted to be an art history major, I was strongly discouraged. So I was a business
I hear a
major.
theme here.
What?
I hear a theme here.
Yes.
So interesting.
So I was a business major. And so I worked in business for a while post-college. And then about 8 years into it with ulcers, I was like, what the hell am I doing? So I left that business world and I just looked for a company that I felt passionate about and worked for that company and grew self-taught as a graphic designer. So I'm a graphic designer. So I worked for the same company for 17 years as a graphic designer. You may have heard of them. It's a beverage company called Honest Tea. Local business, which is no longer local. They're now part of Coca-Cola, which is in Atlanta. So I left Honest Tea last October, shortly before the Bethesda office closed. So kind of saw the writing on the wall. I would have gotten a severance, but whatever. So I decided to go out on my own, and I have partnered up with one of my former colleagues. So we do graphic design, mostly in the food, beverage, hospitality, that kind of niche area, which we're just both so, it's kind of in our blood at this point. So mostly do design work for consumer packaged goods, some restaurants, working on a car wash right now. So really like overall branding of everything from, the logo's like the most minimal part of it actually, but branding for just these full across the board everything. So I design trucks like that are behind you and everything. So it's a really fun job. It's really exciting. It's great to work with all these different brands versus being focused on one brand for a really long time. Yesterday I was at a photo shoot all day for one of my clients, watching their brand come to life. So it was really exciting. So it's a very busy, fast-paced world, and I don't have one client, I have a dozen, and they're all the most important clients. So that's how my life is. I started painting about 2 years ago. I think I was starting to get a little bit unhappy at my job, and I think I was looking for a way to calm myself and kind of step away from the computer, because I spent all of my time staring at a computer every day. So I actually saw my sister-in-law who paints, and I saw what she was doing. She's not local. And I was like, I think I can do that. So I just started painting and I could do it. So I started taking some classes at the Yellow Barn, and no teacher was the perfect fit for me. So a couple people that I had, knew through the community had recommended Glenn. So I started classes with Glenn about, I think like a year ago. I think I've taken like 3-ish classes with many of you. And here I am. So, I'm painting when I can. I honestly thought I was going to leave my old job and only be working like 3 days a week and painting 2 days a week. And I maybe paint on weekends if I have time, but I've been so fortunate to be so busy during this pandemic. I'm working like sometimes 40, 50 hours a week. So I haven't had time to paint much, but I miss it. And I think what I miss the most is like the community. I chose not to take virtual classes when they moved to virtual, because what I really loved was standing next to people and walking around and seeing people's techniques. And that's what I missed. That's what I loved from going to classes. So I will
say that being able to walk around and look at Mandy's paintings was also a highlight for me. Just saying.
Thank you. So, I missed that part. And so when Diane reached out, I thought this is a really good opportunity to stay connected since I really have no connection right now. I had entered my first show right before the pandemic hit. And then, my first painting that ever got in a show was held, hostage for 6 months. But it sold, not from the show, elsewhere. So
Very cool.
yeah, this is just a nice way to stay connected until we can see people again in person and go to class. So that was
Right.
me.
Well, as you can see, I think we've got a great group to move forward with here. And I am very excited about working with all of you as we move forward. And one of the things that I think we wanted to spend a piece of our time with today was to kind of reprise where we are, what we've been thinking so far, what Karash, who sort of spearheaded this educational effort for us, has learned, and then to think about how we can put together a group of people who can work together to make this that part of our mission a reality. Talking to each of you, I was just fascinated by the fact that it wasn't really the main reason that any of you were sought out, but the fact that each of you brings some perspective to this effort that I think will just add energy and connections and potential resources and all kinds of things for us to be able to take this part of our work forward. So Karash is going to kind of step back, help us remember, for those of us who've been around for a while, and then sort of get you guys up to speed on what we've been thinking in the past, what she's been exploring, who she's been talking to, so that we can all kind of start at the same place. And then I think what we want to do before we end today is to figure out how we're going to organize ourselves to really make something happen with this work. So Karash.
Okay. Thank you, Diane. So let me first apologize because I sent a note to Diane saying, would you like me to speak? And then got busy and didn't check my email again when she said yes. So I don't have a prepared statement of what I want to say. So I'll say less rather than more. And I apologize if I'm a little bit meandering. But basically, we had talked about the idea, since right now our community is very much kind of people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, maybe even beyond, is how do we reach out to other communities, specifically maybe the younger group, and certainly more disadvantaged that could really use some assistance to pursue art. So my thought was, I know as a teacher, there are all sorts of things that you might not think about, like if you're going to take classes, do you have the time? Can you get some kind of accreditation for doing outside classes to learn more about, say, Glenn's process? So my first thought was, get into the schools, talk to some of the teachers, talk to kids. What do we really, what niche could we fill? What do they even want? Because I don't want to spend a lot of time planning a program that teachers or students don't even want or feel they need. So I started down this avenue, and then COVID came and teachers were so overwhelmed, I just put a halt to it. So essentially, this will be pretty quick. Who have I talked to? I talked to one of the seasoned teachers at Walt Whitman High School, one of the really exciting and interesting art teachers at Bullis. Then I've had several conversations with a teacher at Blair Ewing, which is a school for kids in Montgomery County that have been expelled for gang activity, violence, drugs, or in some cases just tardiness. I mean, not showing up, truancy. I then just today actually had a more formal conversation with somebody I've known since he was a baby, actually, who's a fourth-year student at Pratt. So he was a Montgomery County kid and is now a painting soon-to-be graduate from Pratt up in New York. He happens to be Hispanic and transgender. So he's had a lot of really interesting experiences navigating the world as a minority, as an underrepresented kind of person, I think in the art. So basically what I would say is there are a lot of challenges. There are challenges in terms of the amount of time that teachers have to teach, their environments, the interest of their students, the curriculums that they are required to adhere to. There's a real, kids are not so interested in a lot of Glenn's really learn the anatomy, really learn color theory, dig in and get those details. You know, I think in a lot of cases, people want to begin with a lot of freedom of expression and freedom of material choices and that sort of thing. One thing that everybody mentioned would be great is an opportunity to show. Producing more live shows when we're open back up, also online, but opportunities for artists to meet artists, to show their work, even if sometimes they're micro grants, just to allow those $35 entrance fees to get into other shows. They'd like us to create some high school shows, but also to get into other shows and to give them knowledge about how to access those shows. I certainly wouldn't have known how to do it if it wasn't for Glenn constantly posting and letting us know and reminding us. So I think that'd be a really interesting place to start. And anybody that's interested in this, I'd love to get together and give more specific details of what I found so far. Also just gather what you already know and maybe tap into you talking to the same types of people. I would love to get some people that are homeschooled, maybe because they have disabilities or something like that, or maybe that's just what they do in this day and age. I think there's a really great opportunity. I think there's not a lot out there and we can find some really interesting things to do. The second step then will be, how much time are we willing to take to create curriculums and teach programs, or how much money do we have to just offer up money for other people's programs? That stuff's, I think, the second phase. The first phase is just, what do people want?
That's great. So, you know, I think we should spend a few minutes discussing this, and I know that, so Rob, if you don't mind my calling on you, I know that
No, go right ahead.
you had immediately some thoughts about people that you know who might be useful to talk to, and some,
Sure.
you know, if you don't mind, just kind of.
No, I'll just repeat what I shared with
Yeah.
you. When Diane and I chatted, there were like at least 3 people and resources that jumped to my mind. I don't know if anybody knows. There's a gal who, she actually has a studio in Artists and Makers. Her name is Rosanna Azar. You know, she's a painter. I've been friends with her for probably 20 years. And she's, I think that her business, and I may not fully understand it, but she runs programs with I think elementary school and like after school programs with kids. I mean, her work, I believe, much of it is for profit, but she's also someone who's been heavily involved in you know, community works. And she has, I'm just thinking out loud that she's someone who might be able to give us, you know, more insight into some of the issues that Karash is mentioning about time and teachers and access and, you know, schools and so on. So she's one person who, you know, she's kind of part of the, she's part of the painting community and so on. The second person who I'm friends with is my next door neighbor, person in the DC school system. She's basically, I don't know what her official title is, but she's basically in charge of of creative curriculum and creative approaches to curriculum for the entire DC school system. and she used to work in her own business, doing things. And so she's been exposed to both, nonprofit and obviously, school system things. And I have spoken to her in the past. I have another friend who's a glass artist who works out of the Torpedo Factory, and she at one point was looking at talking about trying to develop, and she's a sculptor, not a painter, glass artist, but she was talking about, and she was doing a lot of public, not a lot, but she did a number of public art projects where, she's responded to RFPs. In any event, she got interested in thinking about how she could potentially create a mentor program for disadvantaged, kids in some of the kinds of things that she was doing. I mean, working with glass and welding and things that could be both art and potential occupations for people. But I don't think, COVID hit, and I don't think she got real far with it. I actually connected her with my neighbor. I don't know if they ever spoke, but Karen Cole, my neighbor, I'm staring out the window at her house. She really knows a lot about the school system, about the DC school system. And, she's not the person who's figuring out every writing arithmetic and reading stuff. She has, I think, a broader, more creative mandate in the schools, if I understand what she does correctly. Anyway, I think she could be a really useful resource, and I'm more than happy to chat with her or invite her if she's willing, to chat with us, as well as this other person, Allison, my friend, the glass artist. Allison Sigathy is her name. And then the fourth resource is actually my wife, Barbara, who is, also a friend of Diane's. And Barbara worked, she worked as a school counselor in the Baltimore County school system for a number of years. I don't know if she has contacts in that particular school system these days, but I think more important, she really knows about a lot about kids. Her psychology work was in early childhood development, and she's worked with like mental health clinics in DC. She worked at Rika in Maryland for a number of years. She worked with the job from which she retired a few years ago was as an ESOL counselor in the Montgomery County schools, and she knows many people who work with kind of a variety of, I think, a variety of populations that sound like they may fit into what I think I'm hearing, you speak about, Karash. And she loves kids, and she's also kind of searching for things that she may be more interested in volunteering. And I mentioned this to her, and she started rattling stuff off, and I'm like, yeah, that's great. Let me see what this group is like. And so anyway, those are 4 immediate resources, of people who I think could, perhaps add value to a discussion about the questions you're asking, Karash.
What I would say is what I've been doing so far, and I think anyone that's interested in this group, I may ask you first to hit these people up with some basic information so we don't waste everyone's time.
Of course.
Basically, what do you wish was available to your community, whether that's, whatever age person, that's not available now? And are we the right organization to be able to potentially fill these niches? Diane resent out our original ideas of what we were going to do and how we were going to do it. And honestly, a lot of this school stuff doesn't fit into any of that. So I don't know where we're going to go with this. Do we follow the same path that we had before, that it must be painting, that it must be continual, there has to be art history, there has to be, I mean, there's all sorts of stuff that don't fit into this? Or do we make some changes for this population and go down this route and follow looking to give money to this group? I don't know the answer to that yet, but I think just starting out with a clear sense of what do educators want? What populations could we actually serve? When you say things like mentorship programs, I get so excited. I'm like, yeah, we have all these artists. We have like, that sounds amazing. So is that something that could really happen? And is that something that our group would be interested in trying to facilitate? I don't know yet. I just have my own idea of what excites me. And that was really different from what Glenn had originally proposed.
Yeah, and that's part of what I think that we want to be clear about, is that that document I sent to you, as I said at the beginning, not as a, okay, now you know exactly what the parameters are for what we're going to do, but just rather what the original thinking was at the founding. And it is completely up to us to determine, because we didn't know much at that point about, how we wanted to make access to people becoming artists in whatever form that might take, what the best use of our resources and time was in order to do that. And I think we've, even without revising where we were even up to today, we've evolved from where we started, and that is fine. I think it's up to us to decide what's the best way to fulfill this mission. And the mission can be, clarified to make it clear, what it is that we think we can be our best contribution. And that's what that's totally up to us to make that happen.
May I suggest that we come up with a list of questions like Koresh pointed out, because two questions come to mind immediately, and that is, what kind of age group are we talking about? I have contacts with people who are Montgomery County elementary school art teachers. And there's a big group of them, and they're having a very hard time right now. And so far, I've heard mention of Montgomery County, the District of Columbia, and the Torpedo Factory, which is Northern Virginia. And with our current budget of $20,000, how broad are we talking?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not suggesting that we.
Questions.
Yeah. I'm not suggesting that those are places that we would necessarily work, as much as we might learn from people who have experiences in those other places with who are the populations. Because obviously, if we're in Montgomery County and we want to focus here, you'll find, I think, a variety of populations in Montgomery County. And the question that comes to my mind after listening to Koresh and what John just said is, really, I think doing a better job of defining what's a disadvantaged population, what age, what kids, what socioeconomic, what's the definition of this disadvantaged in the minds of this group. Again, I mean, like Barbara had worked with a number of, I think they're called Title IX schools, which are, and you guys who are educators may know more about this than not, but there are, fairly vast populations of lower socioeconomic families and children, in schools and, and around. So it seems like talking about at some point, who's the constituency, who, is it all college educated 60-year-olds who are retired and doing art like us?
It's a fair question, because as it is, the grants that we provided in the last year ended up to people over 50. And
no, they were, neither of them were 50. Do you think? though.
Wow, make
It doesn't matter. I mean, I don't know it. I don't know anything except what I've heard you guys talk about in the past 10 minutes.
Right. So, but let me say this also about the $20,000. That is, I think at this point it's more like 28. But but you can't run much of a program on that. So always
Yeah.
we've thought that once we had a concept developed, some kind of a program designed, connections made, people who were excited about what we were trying to accomplish, and we could see a path forward that was realistic, we go raise money to make that happen. And that is another thing that I have done a whole lot of in my life. And but we've got to do the groundwork to have the design, have the connections, have the outreach, kind of do exactly what you guys are talking about, get really clear about who the target is, all of those things. Once we have that together, then we're in a position to do some testing of it, see what kind of reaction we get, and we can utilize resources we have right now to do that first phase, and then we can go raise money. So we should not assume that we are limited ultimately by the money that we have in the bank. We actually are in a pretty luxurious position to have the talent at the table, the potential, further talent that each of you and we can bring to the table, the interest in developing a design, the desire to really target who the population is, and the money to take a first phase of work out there into the world. So that's not a bad place to be, to get to a place where you can raise money to actually do something that has a longer time frame.
So I just have this is one of my random thoughts. So warning. I think it's been almost a year, because I know we're going through our 2021 planning right now in the credit union from a budgetary perspective, and things we would really, the must-dos. Then there's the really gotta do's, and then there's the nice to do. So I think I may have brought this up a while ago, but we have had so much change in everything that's happened around in our environment. Is it premature for me to throw out there, and I hate to use the word business plan, it sounds so boring, or sort of I like to think of things in buckets. As I was listening to all of you speak, we've got the financial bucket, so, where is obviously that ties to, whatever it means, grants or fundraising. And then I was just making notes. I'm a geek for the Channel 12, and here in Rockville, I watch on a regular basis. Is there something from a venue perspective? And then there's the target. I mean, do we need to start thinking of a high level sort of look 10,000 feet up to say, okay, so that way, as we meet, whether in this format, on our monthly, and then, we have these subs that, kind of do their thing. I know when we first started this, it's been a year, I think, right? Like last November,
Yeah.
And Diane, you had put out, and the group said, hey, what are you interested in? And again, everything by no fault of anybody. It's just everything, we just had to readjust. So are we at that point again, you guys, where we need to start to throwing everything on the wall, or throwing everything out, and then sort of categorizing in what makes sense and when, and then who's gonna kind of go after whatever it is we think of from a chronology perspective and milestone standpoint. And I said the word business plan, but I'm just thinking.
Sure.
Yeah,
no,
that's
project
absolutely
management.
right.
Yeah, I would suggest a 5-year plan at least, actually. And from, thinking big and thinking our wildest dreams of what we would like to be able to do with something like this, and then we'll have to winnow it back, but then you find out what the steps are.
Yeah.
So I think that's absolutely true. I think that but I also think we're kind of at this moment where we have two needs in terms of digging into something that really is going to be important for our ability to get to a place where we can create a 5-year plan. And one is the conceptualization and the design of something that we can do with this mission that we are wanting to pursue, that we've been talking about. I think we need to know what, develop that idea, develop connections, do exactly what Karash and several of the rest of you have been talking about really digging into this and figuring out some potential pathways forward in this work. So I would say that's one really essential thing we need to do short term. The other essential thing we need to do short term is to develop programming for at least the interim until we have a vaccine that keeps our Compass Club connected to us. And those, just to get really, and then there's lots of other things we ought to be thinking about in terms of a broader, longer term thing. But I think these are things that this is kind of a moment in time. We've got new folks on board who bring lots of really great skills and resources and energy. We've got, Karash has been doing all this groundwork. Let's dig into that and figure out where our next steps are with that work, what it looks like we could be doing. And then I think we also need, and I'm certainly happy to keep trying to work on this, but it would be great for me to have somebody to help me think about, who can come do demos for us for Compass Club and help get those scheduled, so that it feels to me like we're kind of boiling down to, in terms of our immediate activities, that those are the things that we really have to put the greatest focus on. Then I think at that point, we are really in a position to focus back in on rethinking about what is our overall mission, what is our 5-year plan, all of that. So if people are willing to kind of put those two focuses up front, I think that gets us somewhere that we can then build on. And we don't, I think that it's important for us to get to a place where we really can build some concrete work.
Diane,
Well,
can I ask you a question?
I'm not, Bill, discounting. Every organization I've run has always had both short and long-term plans that we were operating off of. And I totally agree with you on the necessity of doing that. But we're an organization that has no staff. We're an organization that has a minimal budget. And right now we got to get to a place where a jumping off place to where we can build further to where we can, reasonably even have a 5-year vision of what we can do.
Well, and
Diane?
you're absolutely right. And I think, I tend to think, woo, way out there. But to that point, you're absolutely right. I guess maybe more simply stated, what could we consider? You're right. This is just us, right? So what could we consider as our first, no matter how small it is, accomplishment, or feeling that we accomplished something, no matter how small it is? And that builds obviously engagement amongst all of us. It builds camaraderie. It builds momentum. What's the next small accomplishment? Very digestible pieces. And it doesn't necessarily have to be some fancy ornate plan, like you were saying. But what is that? And what can we say when we get together again? Wow, we did this. Oh, wow, we did something. This is great. I don't know. That's just to add to that.
Diane, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, correct. Karash was, and then Karash, then Margot, then Rob.
Okay, just a quick one. It seems like, we've had a lot of attrition. We've had people feeling, everything is in such upheaval right now with COVID, that all of our priorities have changed and our lives have changed, that the feeling of running the Compass Club and what are we going to do next, I feel like is kind of an anchor, weighing so many people down. I don't see anyone jumping forward and going, God, I get so much out of this. I love it. Is there any way that we can hire someone to manage that short term that might be excited to have, $1,000 over the next however many, 6 months or whatever until we're vaccinated, just so that it doesn't feel like a burden? Because I mean, speaking for myself, it feels like a huge burden to have to deal with that.
Yeah.
It's not very exciting for me.
Right. No, well,
You
and
mean to line up people for
yes.
activities, or
Yeah.
talent for activities? Mm.
Right. So like mainly at this point, I think our best bet is to continue to do demos because people really like that. And, it's mainly just who could do a demo and making, it wasn't that hard to get Cindy Procius to do this. It just was, figuring out a way to connect up with her and getting her to pay attention to me. And then, and then we developed kind of a rapport, and then she was fine, then she said, sure, I'll do that. So, but it's just takes some, and I don't know. I think for me, the challenge is I don't even know who's out there who does this kind of thing,
Yeah.
or who, and then the only reason that I knew Gavin was because Gavin is part of kind of this community in a sense. And the only reason that I knew Cindy Procius was because of Facebook. And I've watched some of her Facebook Live demos. And, there are people out there who know a lot more than I do. I'm just like, I have no way I have no knowledge to draw upon. And I'm happy to go try to get people once I know who to go get, but I don't know anybody. This is just like not my world yet. And I would love for it to be my world, but it just, you are my world, but people worthy of doing demos for our club are not yet my world. So I don't know. So I'm happy to keep working on that part. It's not what really juices me up, but I will do that because then if other people can help me identify people to go after. And so if any of you have ideas for that, that would be great.
Okay, so
But I'm with you, Parash. It's not the most exciting thing that we are talking about doing.
so it sounds like a really a simple concrete action is to generate at least names of people who might be good demo artists,
Yeah.
whether they're local or elsewhere, given that this virtual world makes it easier in some ways if you don't have to have a person come to your location.
Yeah. And I
Right.
think we're paying $300, so we're not
Yeah.
like going to make somebody rich,
Of course.
but
That was my next question. Are the artists paid, and is there flexibility in that price?
well, if it's somebody really wonderful,
Mhm.
sure, we could pay more than $300, but we're a nonprofit. People have been totally happy to do it for $300 so far. And it's,
So
it's a couple hours.
I have an idea. I mean, maybe this is crazy, but are there, for example, MAP graduates from, the first couple of years who, well, obviously from, from your, the cohort 1 or cohort 2 who might be, people.
Yeah,
Sorry
so
about that.
Just an idea.
what do you think, Karash, John?
Well, we
Just an
know
idea.
offhand that Seth Campbell from the second round did do some teaching. I don't know if that
No,
he has a rather specific way of.
He did a demo for us just before we crashed, just
Okay.
before COVID.
Right.
So with that, so we've had done 3, and he was the first one we did.
Now,
But-
I may have to leave in a little bit, folks. This guy needs his diaper changed. But so a couple of things. One is that I do have a couple of workshops that I've been working on that I was going to pitch to Glenn, but it could easily be Compass Club kind of stuff. But in terms of program for the Painter's Compass, Rob, I would love to get together with Barbara and get some understanding about her, what she knows through early childhood education, and how much of what we're learning in MAP, how can we craft that to work with young children? And then we can go forward with creating at least one program for elementary age. I think we've got a couple people here who are interested in working with elementary age, but we need to understand clearly how children learn. I mean, I'm already doing some of that, but I'm just shooting from the hip because I am not a trained teacher. So I've had some success with it, but I would love to learn more, and I would love for any programming that we do to be really professionally well designed.
So one of the things that I think we ought to we're not going to be able to do all of the detailed work around this topic today, obviously. I think we've gotten a start on some of this conversation, which is very energizing, and I feel like there's lots of potential here. And Karash, if you could pull together like the folks who are really eager to dig into this topic and have, I think that together, it's kind of like, we don't want to, like, again, because we've got only so much of your time that we can utilize for all of you. Let's together come up with ideas, specific ideas for, what kinds of, what information do we need to figure things out? What are specific potential pathways forward?
Yeah.
Which one of those do we want to pursue first? What are the resources available to do that? Let's just kind of try to get real concrete around that together, because there's so much, people sitting around this table now can really contribute to that. And so if you don't mind taking the lead in pulling that together, that would be great. And then
I'll put something together. I'll put it out to the whole group, and then you can email me individually if you're interested in being a part of the process in any way. You don't have to be all in necessarily. You might just say, I want to dip my toe and see how it feels. That's totally fine. I'll get that out by Monday or Tuesday.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Lee, say who else did I say I was supposed to go to that I haven't gone to yet?
Doesn't matter.
Okay. Leanne, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, I think maybe, I don't know how much you've been able to, Koresh, dig into, where is the biggest need, either in terms of the type of activities or programs that we would offer, and to what age group. And I think if we could really get more specific about that, and to see if that matches up with what we're able to do and want to do, then that would be a good starting spot, because otherwise we're very ambitious and have so many ways we want to go. If we just narrow it down to, okay, we think we can have a big success in this area, just as a starting point.
I'm thinking what's the most widespread need out there, and really narrowing it so we can do one thing well rather than try to do a lot of things very poorly. So I have some ideas about that, and let me put it down in a more articulate way for you guys. And we'll use that as a jumping off point.
Perfect.
Just off the top of my head, from my experience, and it's often with younger, I've worked with teachers in all the grade levels, but especially right now with COVID, and that will change, but just in arts, arts education has suffered because math and language arts has just kind of taken over all of the focus in classrooms. But I would think that after school programs, and even though they're not after school programs that are in person now, that parents are desperate for some kind of help with, what do I do with my kids all day at home once they're finished with their remote learning that's going to be engaging. And so even those things that we do that were kind of COVID generated would translate into after school programs that there are no art specialists, for after school, but with support, teachers could do things that were, and caretakers could do things that would be.
So Mandy, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I have a few comments. Some are a little related, non-related, but I'm just gonna try to wrap them all up. So I have two kids in school. One is in middle school and one is in high school. And I feel very lucky where we have resources that I can send them to after school programs and well, not right now, but they both have taken art classes in after school programs. And honestly, the teacher that we had was amazing. But I was thinking about what a lot of us were talking about in our introduction, is that we kind of all found art later in life. And that's because maybe we weren't allowed to be on that path, or
Yeah.
because we weren't encouraged to be on that path, or because we didn't know that path existed. My younger son is going to be 14 in a couple weeks. He's very interested in art, and he's applying to a magnet program, which is at Einstein it's called the Visual Arts Center. And what's really, and I didn't know it even existed. That kind of thing didn't exist when I was in high school. Otherwise, I would have been very interested. But, you know, I, of course, am encouraging him to go for it because I wasn't encouraged. But we just found out about it by chance. And what's really great about a program like that is that it prepares you for a future in the arts. And I think that, you know, young grade school kids, elementary school kids, I think the arts is fun, and it really gives you the sort of building blocks you need for your love of arts. But when you're a little older, middle school, high school, you really need to build on that. And if you truly have a passion for it, then that's you know that that's your path in life. And I think what's great about this program is it really prepares you. It helps you create a portfolio. It, you know, helps you learn what colleges are right for this kind of future, whether it's digital arts, you know, fine arts, like, you know, there's so many different kind of arts that didn't exist when we were all in school. So I just think that kind of a program is really about preparing these kids for the future. And I think there are so many kids that maybe aren't good at math or aren't good at, you know, science, and are so creative, but don't really know that that is an option for them. You know, and I think an outreach like that could be really interesting, just, you know, because we all sort of miss that.
Yeah.
Or, you know, for whatever reason.
Really great
So
point.
that's one thing. So there's this program at Einstein. It might be worth reaching out to those teachers and, you know, just talking to them. They're two women. I mean, the program has been in existence for 40 years. I never knew it was there. So it's, and it's sent a lot of kids to amazing schools that I wish I had known about.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. The other thing was, I was just sort of curious, are we all Montgomery County residents? Or, well,
Ma'am.
I know not you, Diane, but I mean, I can only speak for
She's an honorary.
yeah. I mean, I can only speak for myself, but I feel like there is something about helping our own and, you know, the people in our backyard and our neighbors. And, you know, as you guys have heard or seen in the news, like Montgomery County schools are kind of a mess, you know, and there's a big problem with, or big conversations around equity. And, you know, there are a lot of disadvantaged families and children. And I mean, I think that given that the Compass Club is a Montgomery County based business, it would be really nice if we could support our neighbors. So that's just my 2 cents. And there was something else I was going to say, but now I forgot.
Hearing you talk about, you know, preparing younger kids for a career, it might also be interesting just to have not professional artists so much, but people who use art in their career, like you, Mandy, who, you know, a graphic designer. Have people who are in the real world talk about, you know, how does art inform their career choice and how they use it in their career, so that there's a, you know, what are you going to do when you grow up? Here are more possibilities of what you can do as an artist to get into that.
Well, that's really interesting, Leanne, because, you know, there are career days at schools.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
career days are really easy to do virtual. So I have done career day for my kids when they had it. And, you know, I brought swag from Honest Tea, you know, everyone loved it. But it was really fun because I do think that kids don't realize what you can do with different, in different avenues of the arts.
Right.
Yeah, you don't just being an artist doesn't mean being a painter or,
Right.
you know.
Can also
so-
be,
Program in, that's a whole program right there.
right.
Yeah, I mean, but
Careers
like,
in art, careers, art-related careers.
yeah.
Well, and you, Rob even had, I mean, your career had an art element to it too, right? So,
Oh, totally.
yeah,
I mean, and I went back to art school also, 35 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So
no, I think it's
wanna
a
just,
great idea.
Rob, you had been raising your hand. I want to get to you. And
No
then
worries.
we are, I want
Out
to
of time.
end our meeting on time so that we
Okay.
we have that discipline. So,
Oh, I did remember the one other thing. I'm so sorry. I mean, I don't know if you guys are all on what social media you're on, Instagram, but like I follow a lot of artists on Instagram. And so you do see a lot of artists that do short, like little live videos or whatever, but that may be a really good way to find artists that are maybe outside of our, we all kind of know who each other are. We've heard of each other's names. It would be really nice to get some people sort of outside of our little, cluster, and maybe over the country. So like, I don't know if you're all willing to try to get on Instagram, but just, you can just kind of start to find them. I already have someone in mind, Diane, the woman that I mentioned to you that is in Albuquerque, she does video like lessons. So it might be worth reaching out to her,
Cool.
but you start to kind of get in that mindset of like finding all those different people and just seeing what they do. And then, different styles out there, like maybe it's not these perfect realistic styles, but something more abstract, which is outside of all of our probably comfort zones, but it'll be really
Sure.
interesting to watch.
yeah,
Or like a graffiti artist. Like I would love to watch a graffiti artist.
that's an interesting
Yeah, me
idea.
too.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. So send me, if you
Okay.
run across them, send them to me too.
Okay.
Today I posted things on Instagram.
Good for you.
This is my first, and actually I posted one thing some other time in the past, but today I posted things on Instagram. I am now an Instagram.
Okay.
Um,
Well,
Rob,
you find a lot of really cool people out there. So that's one thing. Okay.
I've only used it to find people to cut my hair before. Um, Rob, what were you going to say? Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, I couldn't agree more with Mandy about our backyard.
Uh-huh.
I totally, agree with that. And then the other thing that I was going to say a little bit earlier is, I mean, just in terms of understanding where we are in process, it sure sounds like, I mean, again, from listening to everybody here, it sounds to me, like we're really in a data gathering mode for this other thrust. And so making any conclusions about it at this point is premature.
Yeah.
And that it's important to be open to, gathering information that will help us, start to kind of focus on, what you guys were talking about earlier in terms of more effective planning. But the difference between gathering data and, and focusing things down is you have to open up in order to gather data before you can start to narrow your focus.
Yeah.
So for example, I think, there might be benefit in talking to someone who's the head of curriculum at DC schools, not because we want to do work in the DC schools, but because, she has knowledge about populations and then school programs and needs of schools in general. And likewise for, people who we may know in Montgomery County, whether it's schools or other populations.
Yes.
So anyway, that's
I
really all I
totally
wanted to say.
I totally agree with you. And I think that even though we would like to be able to do something and say we've done it,
Well, it depends on your definition of what doing something is and getting something done. If the first step is gathering enough information to understand it, then if in a month we come back and we have gathered a lot more information in particular ways that allow us to evaluate it, we've done something.
absolutely. I agree with that. I'm agreeing with you.
Okay.
All right. Well, So we're going to have Karash is going to get something out early in the week. We're
Yeah.
going to have a group meeting, and I think at this point it can be open to anybody who would want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And then and anybody who comes across somebody who would make a good presenter, please send them my way. And I'll continue. I don't mind keeping that, being the keeper of that task. If I have some help figuring out who to go to. And I can even put something out, maybe I'll put something out on the Painters Compass Facebook page and say, if you've got ideas for people that you'd like to see, let us know. So at any rate, we'll do that. I will also let you know that I want to send out an email to the Compass Club group that says, here's where we are. I wanted to get the new folks in place, and I wanted to get just a little bit of time under our belts before doing that. So I think I'll do it a month from now after we come back and we're sort of have a little bit more to say about what we're thinking about. So that's just FYI. We've come past the ending of our meeting. So I thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here today. I'm feeling really energized and excited. And so we'll take the next steps together. And
Great.
thanks for being a part of it.
Thanks,
Sounds good.
everybody.
Nice to meet you
Everyone,
all.
nice
Nice to meet you.
Have a
Bye.
great Thanksgiving too.
Oh,
All
yeah.
right, yeah, yeah. Well, it's going to be something like this, right?
Yeah.
It's definitely gonna be a family Zoom. Yeah.
All right.
And
right,
let's
I gotta
follow
run.
each other on
Bye.
Instagram.
Yes.
There you go.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.